That's what happens a lot of times at conferences. I don't know if you've ever been to a writer's conference where you go and you learn so many amazing things. You get downloaded all kinds of great information, and you come home with notes and whatnot, and then feel overwhelmed. With Prolific Writer's Life, you get these every day. You can work on a little bit, and then say, oh, okay, I got it, but I got stuck here. And then the next day and the next day. And so the progress is much faster.
Welcome to Story Power, a bi-monthly podcast where my guests and I geek out about the stories we're passionate about in all different genres, styles, and formats. My name is Lucinda Sage-Midgorden, and I started this podcast in the summer of 2020 at the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic. As I watched the reaction of my friends, family, and social media circle, I noticed that many people turned to stories for comfort and help in making sense of the craziness going on around them. My goal was to do the same for my listeners, but as I chatted with my guests throughout the first year, I discovered that their personal stories were the most fascinating thing about each episode. Neil Gaiman says, "Fairy tales are more than true not because they tell us that dragons exist, but because they tell us that dragons can be beaten." I now know that sharing our experiences with others helps us defeat our own dragons. It is our stories that connect us to one another. Let's see what wisdom today's guest has to share with us. Today on Story Power, my guest is Lorraine Haataia, episode 51. Lorraine, welcome to the show.
Thank you so much for having me.
And I was looking at your website again this morning, and you are the founder of Prolific Writer's Life. Can you tell us something about your company and about what Prolific Writer's Life is all about?
Sure. Prolific Writer's Life is a community for writers. I'm a writer, and I've been around writers my whole life. And one of the things that I noticed is that writers just need a community, not just once a month, or even if they have a weekly group that they meet with, but they need a community to be around on a regular basis where they can meet new people, kind of like you do at a conference, but more regularly. Mm-hmm. So I saw this as a need, as something that I wanted as a writer, and I just couldn't find it out there anywhere, and decided to build it.
That's great. And how long have you been in existence?
So Prolific Writer's Life existed in my mind starting around 2019, probably early 2019. The idea kind of got formulated. And then by the end of 2019, actually it was 2018, by the end of 2019, my husband had set me up with a developer who could understand how we can make this community work in an online world. And she started the foundation of the website, and then we have built onto it from then.
Oh, that's cool. And how many members do you have?
We actually, I did forget to mention, we launched in January of 2020 of all times.
Oh, wow.
And the first place where I introduced it was the San Francisco Writers Conference in February of 2020. And then, of course, right after that is when 2020 happened and things got unusual.
Right. And still are.
Yes.
Still are unusual. Yes. But in a way, it might be kind of nice for writers to be forced to be at home for a while. Yeah. And some people are still working from home. So yeah, because I don't know about anybody else, but we live half an hour from Bisbee and half an hour from Sierra Vista. So anytime we have to go into town, it takes time to get ready, and then it takes a half an hour to get there, and then whatever you do, and then it takes a half an hour to get home. So it's like a whole day trip.
Exactly. And, I'm the first one to say I'm a huge fan of writers groups that get together in person. I still do I have a local writers group. I recently moved to Arizona. Well, a year ago, I moved to Arizona, and we have a local writers group here that I go to that meets at the library. That meets every other week. But The thing about a small writers group is you can really get to know people. You can follow their work from chapter to chapter, month after month, and get to know them. The limitation of that is you're limited to the expertise of the people in the room.
Right.
So you can kind of get into this group think that will take you in a certain direction that may or may not be the best direction for your book. So, for example, in Prolific Writer's Life, we have audiobook experts, which you might not meet at your local, writing group. So, if you might have thought, well, I had never even thought about putting out an audiobook, but because there's somebody in the community that and you can regularly ask questions, then you say, wow, yeah, what would my book look like in an audiobook format?
Oh, yeah. I think audiobooks are so great. My mother-in-law is a retired librarian, and she's, 85 or something. And so she prefers audiobooks because then her eyes don't get tired from reading. And she loves them. And I did try to do my first novel myself as an audiobook, but it is so much work that it just would be better if someone else did it.
Right.
So that would be great to have some people you could ask questions of. Yeah.
And I would say that the same falls true for self-publishing. You certainly can produce your own audiobook. It's much easier today than it would have been a couple decades ago, for example, to try to take on a task like that. But, in today's tech world, we can self-publish a book. But even in that case, when we self-publish, we're not necessarily sure of all of the checkpoints we might need to have. And so that book might end up going out with a few little mistakes. Just little examples might happen. In spines on a book, there's a certain direction that the title goes, and that might be backwards, or maybe some authors forget to put that on the spine, or the table of contents is on the wrong side of the page, or there's a lot of little things that can go wrong when you try to self-publish. But it's interesting. I applaud the authors who do self-publish and who they just decide, I'm going to do it. They're courageous. They take the time, they take the effort, they put their book out there. They're further ahead and they're going to learn more than the writer who does nothing, for example. But by being around a community and the right people, it can be just a little quick question that somebody asks you, like, oh, what is your spine going to look like? And they might say, oh, what? Right. It's not that we know that that's on a book, but we don't necessarily consciously think about all of the details we need to. So,
right. Yes. We self-published my first book through Smashwords, which is an ebook publisher. And they took my husband's an artist and a graphic artist. And so they took him through all the steps and how to do the cover and how to do the spine and, all of that. So he did the artwork for me and, how to size it. I don't know all of that because I'm not a graphic artist and I'm not a techie either. But yeah, so if you have a place like that, that's also really helpful. I didn't have a writers community. So something like Prolific Writers would be good for those people who don't have anybody with that expertise. So you're a writer. What have you written?
So, yeah, it's interesting. Writing has really been core to my career. I taught ESL for a long time, English as a second language and EFL. And then I did a lot of Comp 1. So I was a professor. I started off actually being a professor. I taught in France for a while. I really loved working with foreign students or international students in the case of being here in the United States. I loved the humor and the fun that would come out of, making mistakes with words, and just really loved bringing the cultures together and being around all the people. So I started off as a professor, and then I got more involved in corporate training. And then I kind of didn't go back to education. But then I've worked for builders. I've done marketing copy. I've done a lot of intranet copy, articles.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got involved in quality control. So I wrote a lot of standard operating procedures and business type things. At this point in my life, I'm more interested in publishing books that are for writers, actually. There's still a teacher inside of me that wants to help writers.
Mm-hmm.
And so I do have several books that I've written that I never published. I have one, for example, called A Woman's Guide to Packing a Suitcase. And I call this kind of my therapy book because about 10 years ago, my husband had an opportunity to move to China and do some work over there. And so at this point, we were pretty much selling off everything, selling our house. And I was kind of mentally preparing myself for, okay, what can I put in a suitcase to move to China? Because it's like we weren't going to get container ship full of stuff to take over there. We were just literally going to take what we could take in our gigantic suitcases. So I call it my therapy book for like preparing to move to China. And, that book is a little bit dated at this point because I didn't take the time to publish it. So anyway, maybe someday that book will come out because maybe now after COVID is over, people will be ready to figure out how to pack a suitcase again. But the current book I'm working on is, I kind of have a working title called Thoughts on Writing, but this book is, it's one in a series, but this one is about our thoughts. And so how do we think as a writer? What is our self-talk? What beliefs do we have about writing? What beliefs were taught to us about publishing and writing? And you can't make any money as a writer, all these things that go through our mind. How do we motivate ourselves? Are we enthusiastic about what we're writing? Do we take advantage of waking up in the middle of the night? Like, are we that excited about our project where we wake up in the middle of the night and have to scratch on a notepad on the bedside? It's really like all the things that go through our mind related to our writing. As part of that series later, I would like to talk about the actual practice of writing, because every writer has a different way of writing. Some people like to be in a coffee shop, a noisy place. Some people need silence. Some people listen to music. Some people use a notepad. Some people use their computer. It's, what is your whole writing process? And so it started off as one book, but it started getting so big that I had to, one of my writing coaches, and I do have a couple writing coaches, which is really helpful, suggested that I turn it into a series of shorter books.
Oh, yeah.
And so that's what I ended up doing. And it's interesting, Lucinda, because when you're in a writing community and talking with other people who have experience with writing and publishing, sometimes they can say something that just takes a gigantic burden off your soul, right? Like, wow, yeah, this doesn't have to be one gigantic 100,000 word volume book, right? It can be a short 30,000 word book or something, or 40,000, I don't know. But yeah, just being in community with writers creates a conversation that we don't have if we're just talking to our friends at a coffee shop.
Right. Yes, that's true. And you and I were talking earlier today about, I don't have a writing partner right now. And in a way, that's a bad thing, because even though I would love to write on my novel every day, the podcast has sort of taken over my life since I have to do everything. I record it, I edit it, I do the show notes, I put it up on social media and on my website. And so I was, after you and I hung up from each other, I was thinking, oh, that's part of why I don't have time to write every day, because I am so inundated with all this work of the podcast. So when my husband retires and he takes over some of those duties, I think it will be easier.
It's funny you mentioned that, Lucinda, because a lot of people do want to write. And even though there's this desire that we feel, and in some cases, it's almost like a compulsion, like I know I have to write. And yet there can sometimes be a block between that inner desire and then the results in the daily life. So one of our experts here at Prolific Writers Life is Coach Linton McLean with Pinnacle High Performance Coaching. And he was observing this with our writers, and he came up with an idea that we would write together. So we have something on our calendar 6 days a week, Monday through Saturday, called Words Count.
Mm-hmm.
And in this Words Count session, it's sort of like Pomodoro sessions, if you've ever heard of that. So a Pomodoro session Pomodoro is a whole thing, but you basically you work and take a break and work and take a break. So maybe you work for 25 minutes, take a 5-minute break. And so what we do in these sessions is you come for the first 5 minutes, you get to talk to the other writers in the Zoom room and say, here's what I'm working on today, or, oh, I'm really tired today, but I'm so glad I'm here because I'm going to write. It could be anything, whatever's going on. So then we set a timer and write for 20 minutes. Then we come back for 5 minutes. We have a check-in. How's it going? And usually that 20 minutes is enough to get in the flow of writing. 5-minute check-in. How's it going? What are you going to work on next? Then we have a 25-minute writing time. And then another final 5-minute check-in. So we do this every day. And the writers who are coming are getting projects done that have been sitting in their attic for weeks or years, or maybe an idea that's been in their head for months or years. And just by showing up and having that healthy accountability time with partners, and then getting to enjoy that time, right? To really enjoy the work. And the other nice part about it, it is virtual. So like you mentioned, you don't have to get showered up and get in your car and drive into town, right? It's just comfort of your home office and join in with fellow writers across the US. We have had people join from other countries. Right now, we're mostly US based. So Words Count has been a really good foundation for writers to just get in that habit.
Yeah. Wow. So I am assuming that you're part of that Words Count thing, working on your books.
Yes.
You participate in that. Yeah.
We have different expert facilitators. I'm one of them. We have 5 different facilitators at this point.
Oh.
5 or 6 different people. So when you come to a Words Count, you actually get to meet an expert in some area of writing as well.
Oh, nice. So do you have different... Leading. Oh, I'm sorry. What?
So each Words Count could be led by a different expert within our community.
Oh, yes. So what I was going to ask is, so do you have a Words Count group for nonfiction, and one for fiction, and one for poetry, and one for maybe writing articles for newspapers or something? Do you have different, are the Words Count groups like that? Is that how they're organized, or how are they organized?
For now, it's just come and write, and you could be writing anything.
Oh, I see.
Yeah, some people could be working on a blog post, others are working on a book. Sometimes people are actually working on just the technical things like getting their blog up. So but for the most part, it is meant for writing. Now, we are just starting some online critique groups as well, but those will be by genre. So I'm leading a critique group for nonfiction. And actually, we're always seeking new experts. Our platform is set up so that experts can come on and share whatever their area of expertise is with writing. In fact, you had another guest on who was talking about the secret society, right? Of writers who compete, right? They put, you can't even see their face. And I'm so interested. I would love to have him come on. And now let's see. It's a secret group. Go ahead.
Jim Marcus is his name. Yeah, Jim Marcus.
Yeah. And his secret society where they have people who compete, and they're typing and their words are coming up on a screen, but you can't see who they are. And then in the end, the winner is the one that comes out. But if they didn't win, you don't have to be embarrassed. Yeah. I think that's just marvelous.
I love that too. Yeah. I cannot remember the name of the society either. I'll have to look it up. I'll put it in the show notes. because
Yeah.
that was a fun episode. Yeah. Yeah, I mean, we do that kind of thing. Well, Jim and I were talking about it because he's involved in theater too. There are those kinds of organizations where you have 2 or 3 or 4 groups of people and they write a play and rehearse it and perform it all in like 48 hours. But this one is for writers. And I just thought that sounded so fun, except that, as I said, my brain doesn't work like that fast. I would not be able to probably do it. Yeah. Because I'm kind of a pantser writer. I get scenes in my head and I'll write that. And then I get another scene in my head. It might not be, might not connect quite to the one that I thought of before. And then when I have all these scenes, then I go through and I put them in the plot outline. I fit them into the plot outline, which is kind of where I am right now. I have a bunch of scenes that I need to rearrange. And
yeah. It does take thought. I think it's the Ink and Blood Dueling Society.
Yes, that's what it is.
Yeah. So, one of the reasons that we built Prolific Writers Life the way we did, it's a marketplace basically for experts and then the writers who need the expertise. So, it's sort of like Etsy is for artists. Prolific Writers Life is for writing experts. So if they have something like this amazing ink and dueling going on, he could come on and host that through our community. So
yeah,
I really wanted to take advantage of the wealth of knowledge and creativity that writers have, not just for their craft, but also for how they deliver whatever it is that they deliver for writers.
Yes, because I've talked to lots of writers, and a lot of them they thought, oh, I have to be home, I have to be alone, I can't write with other people. And then some of them have come up with these creative ways to help them keep going, like a partner or something. And so I'm kind of on the lookout for a partner. It might be my former student that I told you about, Hema Herman. She was in one of my episodes last year. She was in one of my episodes last year. She's working on a novel, and she and I might hook up and be partners. I don't know. We'll have to see. But yeah, it would be good to have a writing partner like my online friends, Stacy Bennett and Audra Trosper. Aide Trosper is her author name. And they get together and they just write for half an hour or 45 minutes. And one of them they're on the phone together because they live, miles and miles apart from each other. And so something like that, I think I need. But as I said, part of it is right now I'm just inundated with all these other things that I'm doing. I need to get rid of a couple of tasks so I have time to do that. Yeah.
So one thing I think is important to consider related to a book is a book kind of has its own life. It literally can extend beyond our lives, just like children. So a book is when a writer takes on a decision to say, I'm going to publish a book. In many cases, people kind of take that lightly. Maybe they just have some poems they want to get to their family, or maybe they're writing a memoir that they really want for their family, or, and some people want a bestseller. But regardless, when we take on this decision and say, I'm going to publish a book, we're kind of saying a lot more between the lines without even realizing it. Many writers don't realize it. They're bringing on another life, which is almost like birthing a human, right? And they're also starting a little business because there's money that's got to come and go and flow here. And even if we make nothing, that's okay, but there's still money going in and out, and there's still marketing that needs to be done if we want to get this book out to the world. So, when we think of our book as another life partner with us, something that can stand on its own, it can help other people. I think one of the things we need to remember is that, just like with a child, that child's going to get influenced by a lot of things,
Right.
by teachers and maybe by churches and the other influencers in the family around them. And our book can be shaped by all these people and thoughts and that we've met through our lifetime. So I think having a writing partner is if that's the one thing that helps you to make the progress and get the book done, then yeah, that's fantastic. That's like having a best friend who helps you and you talk to all the time when your baby's growing up, right? And you're getting this advice and just talking it all through. And then there comes a point when more influence could help, right? It's not that it's necessary because you can certainly publish it, but that other influence and the community around can enrich it and bring more ideas to the table, make you consider more perspectives. And
right.
And then when somebody says, wait, I didn't get this part in this chapter, then okay, so more eyes at some point and more input can be helpful.
Yeah, I did have the women that I talked to Jim about who died that would do that. They would say, this part of the book is boring. The middle part's boring. And having been involved in theater, I know that playwrights say that and screenwriters say that all the time. Act 2 is the hardest part to write because that's the part where the characters are going through lots and lots of challenges or dangerous situations or whatever. And so that comment that they made to me and some suggestions helped me realize, I need to, one of them said, you need to beat up your characters more. I thought was funny, but it's really true. That's the thing that I love when I'm watching a movie or reading a book is the characters go through all these hard things and then they come out a little more knowledgeable or if the book is a series, they've learned enough that it can take them to the next book or the next movie or whatever. So the challenges are really important. And that's always the hard part for playwrights, I think, although I'm not a screenwriter or a playwright. So yeah, I think that's kind of something that people who don't write books don't write novels don't understand is you can't have nice fluffy all the time. You have to have some hard stuff. And sometimes coming up with that is difficult. What are the challenges that they need to face in the book?
Yeah. And, incorporating these comments can be a challenge sometimes too, because all at the same time, we need to keep our own authentic voice. It's just a fact in life that some people are exposed to a lot of rough, rugged characters and some people aren't. And if we haven't been, it might not be top of our mind, even though these storytellers are telling us, well, you need some more conflict here. We need to see a little bit more pain. And so, yeah, we have to dance that line of still being true to who we are and the story we're telling.
Right. Yes.
And, this is interesting, Lucinda. This has been on my mind as I've been working on this book about our thoughts. We need to get still and quiet our minds more often to feel that inner voice when we're writing and to escape from the overload of social media podcasts, not so much podcasts, but just the noise that can come at us through news and just literally noise, right? Of always trying to fill our minds, especially if we're creative people and we love to research and we love to learn. We can tend to want to always have this input. Like I'm driving and I'm, listening to podcasts and listening to books on, audiobooks and whatnot. But at some point we have to turn the volume off and hear that book that we're working on to listen to what it's wanting from us.
Right. I was going to say that also mental noise, because I can't remember. I was talking to somebody recently and they said, I'm thinking all the time. I'm thinking all the time. And it was like, well, if you're going to be creative, you need to still your mind too. You need to get rid of some of that noise in your head that really doesn't have anything to do with anything. It's just these random thoughts going on in your head. And I think maybe, thank you for saying that, because that might be part of the problem with my book is I have so many thoughts in my head from all the projects that I'm working on that I don't have time to just be still and think about, allow my book to speak to me. And that's kind of what I'm struggling with, maybe, is that because I'm thinking about the next task that I have to do instead of taking time to just let the book percolate and messages come forward.
Yeah. And that really ramps up when you kind of are in it every day, even if it's for that short 30 minutes. That's what kind of keeps it top of mind to be there and for you to access quickly when you do have those quiet moments.
And I don't think there's anything wrong with just sitting there looking at the blank page for a little bit, especially if you're letting your mind be blank too. I think we kind of live in this culture of you have to get it done. You have to be doing all the time. And yeah, Thich Nhat Hanh just died recently, and he had somebody put up this little quote about sometimes you just need to be quiet, and you don't have to be doing all the time. You can just be.
I love his short little book about how to eat. I think that's the title of it even. It's a little 4x6 small book.
Oh, wow.
But it's just, and he has that, he has that calming sense of, let's be conscious when we're eating. Let's have an awareness and an appreciation for the food that got here, and for picking up the fork, and for all of the steps. And we're in a world that seems to make us feel rushed sometimes, but it's a state of mind too that we can turn on and off. And that's one thing we have to realize. One of the chapters in my book that I'm working on is about our self-talk. So what you were just talking about, this, what we say to ourselves all day long as a writer. And it's up to us to decide if we want to be crazy busy or not, or to take on the next project, and and to make space for that baby, right? For that book baby. Think about it. When somebody knows that they're going to have a child, some people will go out and buy a whole new house, right? So they can have an extra bedroom. And so they can paint the bedroom pink or blue or whatever they're going to do. And they make a space in their home for what's coming. And writers need to realize this too. If we are bringing a book into the world, that book deserves a space, maybe on our desk, maybe as part of a file drawer. It deserves a space on whatever our digital space is, however people organize their digital space, right? But it needs to have a prominent place. And then that's where it kind of comes back to the community. We have this book coming, and now how is this book going to grow and be nurtured to be the best it can be?
Yeah. I like that. I like the analogy of a book and a baby, those two things, because they both take a while to develop. And sometimes a book takes years. It took me 7 years to write The Space Between Time, 7 years. And as soon as I finished the rough draft of that, I started the second book, but it wasn't time for it yet, because there are two timelines, and one of them is during the suffrage movement. But in 2014, there was no current women's suffrage thing happening. I had to wait until that came along to, for the timeline in the present. So and then COVID happened, which sort of derailed me too. So now I have all these things to think about, all these elements that I can add. And I have done some progress on it, but yeah, I just need to make space for it to grow. You're right. Yeah, I need to make some space for it to grow. Yeah, I was listening to one of my favorite, it's the only podcast really that I listen to every week, and that's What Should I Read Next? And Anne Bogle was talking to a guest who said she and her husband were going to have a baby, and they had a room that was like the library, and it had all these shelves of books in it, and they wanted to convert it. It was a small apartment, and they wanted to convert it to the baby's room. So she painstakingly went through all of her books and decided to keep only 10. And she gave away all of her books. Now, it's not that she doesn't have books. She has them on her, Kindle or whatever. But, and that's how she reads them now, or audiobooks. But physical books, she only kept 10 that really influenced her life. And I thought, we have books in almost every room of our house. And I was looking at the books and I was thinking, yeah, maybe we should clear out some of our bookshelves in a way that would be like making more space. There are other kinds of things that we would like to clear out to make more space for something new. So I like the idea of making a space for your book. I like that idea.
Yeah, we have some interesting experts in the community. I'll just give another example or two. Maya Carlisle is an event manager, and she helped organize our conference, which was in May of 2021. And, when she talks to writers, she asks a lot of questions related to your deadline, or she helps people with like, what is your timelines? And, well, are you going to have a book opening? How do you envision that event? So, she has this event management hat. And then, so for example, another expert, Keiko O'Leary, she's co-founder of Thinking Ink Press, and she's a masterful wordsmith. She will ask questions like, well, how are we going to describe this event? Or, how can we make this super clear so that people understand exactly what to expect when they're going to come to an event, or when they're going to read a blurb on a book? What can they expect from the book? So just it's amazing how many different areas of expertise happen in the publishing industry. It's truly amazing that we can all upload a book these days, right? And get a book on Amazon, for example, in a day or two. It's quite that simple. But to be around, I just want to emphasize to writers what Prolific Writers Life, the importance of it is to get yourself in a community with writers and experts in the writing industry who can help you see all angles of your book, help you think about whether you decide you're going to do all of these things. It's up to you, but at least the awareness of all the options that are out there is what we hope to do for writers, and to let them feel normal, right? If you're talking about struggling with writing your book among family, then they might not get it. But if you're in a group of writers, they're going to say, well, have you tried this? Oh, I love this always works for me. Then you're in an environment that gives you the energy and nutrition you need to keep going and succeed as a writer.
Yeah, you need the support of people who understand what you're going through. Yeah, that's great. And I was thinking too that sometimes we start out writing a book and we don't know what we don't know. So to have a support group of people who, think about how you're going to market your book. Think about, who's going to lay it out? What's your cover going to look like? The blurb for my book was the hardest thing to do. And I came up with one that I like better that I put on the bottom of my blog post every week, but I've never gone to update it at Amazon or iBooks. I've never gone to update the blurb that I think is much better than the first one that I came up with. And I need to go do that.
Yeah, the marketing really continues on indefinitely.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes. Yeah. Well, and Stacey Bennett, I love what she does. She'll take little, like 2 or 3 sentences from her books and put them on her social media page, her group, her group page, and generate interest that way. And I just haven't taken the time to do that. That's one thing that I would really love to have somebody help me with social media for, because I could do that, but I can't wear all the hats all the time. That's another thing that I didn't realize when I took on this podcast. You can't wear all the hats. You have to decide which
Right.
ones to give up.
I was just going to say, for people who do want to do some of their own marketing, we do have a Build Your Author platform work session. We have a number of expert-led work sessions. So what this means is you're going to come and you're going to work. So there'll be an expert in the room who can guide you. But in the Build Your Author platform, what you just mentioned would be a perfect example of what could be done in there, which is you could say, hey, I've been meaning to do this for the longest time. I want to update my blurb on Amazon. Today's my day. I scheduled this hour. I'm here. I'm going to do this. So that, anyway, these expert-led work sessions are an opportunity to actually get work done, not just to come and learn. That's what happens a lot of times at conferences. I don't know if you've ever been to a writer's conference where you go and you learn so many amazing things. You get downloaded all kinds of great information, and you come home with notes and whatnot, and then feel overwhelmed. But with Prolific Writer's Life, you get these every day. You can work on a little bit and a little bit, and then say, oh, okay, I got it, but I'm got stuck here. And then the next day and the next day. And so the progress is much faster. So yeah, Build Your Author platform. And by the way, we do have free trial. So if people want to come and try Prolific Writer's Life for a few weeks, we've been running that special since the beginning of the year. I imagine we'll be running that for quite a while, or maybe not indefinitely. But so people can come and do a free trial, try out some of the workshops and expert-led work sessions, and see how it helps their progress. One of the criteria that I have for our experts is that they love helping people. They love helping writers. And to be in a trusted environment. I don't know if you've ever been in this situation anywhere in life where you're trying to do something new and you're not quite sure who to reach out to. And all of a sudden you start doing an online search, right? You're searching for this or that, but you have no idea. You've never met these people. And so that's another thing, is the trusted community, knowing that somebody has worked with this person, you can trust them, they get the work done, the pricing is fair, and so on.
Right. That's great. Yeah. Yes, that's true, because I have faced that. It's like, ooh, I don't know about this person. I don't know, I don't know if they're going to be, because sometimes they just want your dollars and they don't really want to help you, or the help that they give you is not helpful. They just want your dollars, and the help that they give you isn't really helpful. Yeah, that's happened to me.
So how did it feel after you published your book?
Oh, yeah. Well, that was 2017 is when I published it. It was fantastic, but I felt really inadequate because I don't know anything about marketing. And so, I haven't sold a whole lot of copies, and yet I feel like it's still out there and I still have an opportunity to market it if I learn, especially if I get the second one finished, which is a sequel to it. And I only plan to do 2 in the series. I'm not going to be like some people who have 9 or 10 or 15 books in a series. I'm not going to do that. But then they can be marketed together, companion books, And so hopefully when Barry retires and he can take over some of the social media tasks and the editing and so on of the podcast, then I think I do want to concentrate on learning a little bit more about marketing and how to market them together and build I mean, I do have a blog community, and my blog has been around since 2013. So it's grown really slowly, but that's okay. I don't mind the fact that it will be a slow burn for my books. That's okay with me. The podcast is also maybe I don't even keep track of the statistics on who's listening, how many how many listeners I have to my podcast. It's okay with me if it's a little bit of a slow burn because I am, as I said this morning when we were talking, I am kind of not very good at multitasking. So a one task at a time thing is fine with me. And so if things are going slowly, then that's, oh good. Whew, I have time to deal with this little issue or that little issue.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to be able to give a little bit of the story of Prolific Writer's life, Lucinda. I tremendously appreciate that.
Oh, yes. Now, you'll have to send me I have the website address, but if there are any social media groups or things like that you belong to, you'll have to send me those so I can put them in the show notes. Because, I think that writers sometimes feel alone. I don't know. Maybe I'm the only one that sometimes feels alone. And it's nice to have people who understand what you're going through, no matter what it is, whatever like, if you're a scientist, it's nice to have other scientists go, oh yeah, I totally understand how sometimes your experiment doesn't work and you feel really bad, or, or whatever it is. It's always good to have a support group. So.
Exactly. And I hope you put a link to your book in the show notes as well.
Oh, yes, I will. I'm so happy that we got to talk to each other, Lorraine. Yes. Do you have anything else you want to say?
I guess, if you're a writer out there and you've been trying to work on a project for years, maybe you've had a book that you've been trying to get done and you've just felt stuck. We're a community that we're here for you. We're easy to access online. And we welcome you to come check it out and meet us and work with us.
That's great. Thank you so much for being my guest.
Thank you, Lucinda.
You're welcome. Before I go, I'd like to give a big shout out to Podmatch, which I call a dating service for podcasters. Since I joined their platform, I have met so many wonderful people from all over the world, and they make the matches so easy that if you are a podcaster or you have a message that you want to share, you might want to consider checking them out. The affiliate link is at the bottom of my show notes on my website at Sagewoman Chronicles at sagewoman.life. Part of what I love about them is that they promote civil conversations, and can't we use that right now? So if you check them out, tell them Lucinda sent you. I'd also like to invite you to my Patreon community, where we will have chats with authors or creators. We'll have member chats about the stories that they love, and occasionally we'll have extra episodes or uncut episodes of Story Power. So please go check out my Patreon page at patreon.com/storypower without the hyphen, all one word. I hope you enjoyed the show. If you like what you heard, please share it with a friend and give us a review on your favorite podcast app. It will help people find us. And remember, as Philip Pullman said, after nourishment, shelter, and companionship, stories are the thing we need most in the world. Until next time, this is Lucinda Sage-Midgorden. Thanks for listening.